The velvet gift box rested on the white linen like a secret about to bloom. Inside were the tiniest ivory baby booties and a sonogram in a silver frame. I had imagined this night for months. The candlelight, the sparkle in his eyes, the tears we'd share after years of heartbreak. But when Daniel's phone lit up on the table, everything shattered. One new message. From Tessa, my little sister. It read, "Door code again? T." Daniel looked up at me, his eyes flat, his voice cold. "I'm in love with Tessa." The sound of a glass shattering at another table barely cut through the ringing in my ears. I froze. My fingers grazed the velvet box, and I shut it.
Oh, he didn't just trip. He threw the whole marriage down a staircase. And with her sister, honey, buckle up. If you've ever believed karma runs faster than men who work late, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss this.
I've spent years telling other people's children the words I could never say to myself. Boundaries matter. Don't let someone else tell your story. Your worth isn't up for debate. Every day in my office at North Shore High, I repeat those mantras like gospel to nervous teens with bitten nails and trembling voices. But when the bell rang and the halls emptied, I went home and lived a life that ignored every piece of my own advice. My name is Aria Bennett, 34 years old, high school guidance counselor in Seattle. And until a few months ago, I thought my marriage was the one part of my life I could still trust. Daniel Pierce and I had fought the cruelest battle a couple can fight: infertility. 5 years of hormone shots, sterile clinic rooms, late-night prayers whispered into pillows. 5 years of hope and heartbreak. I learned to cry silently in the bathroom so he wouldn't hear. I learned to smile when people asked, "When are you two finally having kids?" I learned to stop looking at baby clothes when I walked past store windows. Eventually, the doctors told us the truth. The chances are low. Low. Not impossible, but low enough that the word felt like a tombstone. Daniel threw himself deeper into work, luxury real estate, always chasing the next big closing. I threw myself into my students. We made peace, or at least a fragile imitation of it, until one rainy Tuesday morning. I was late. Not just stressed late, my body felt different. I bought a test at the pharmacy on the way home, shoved it into a paper bag, and locked myself in our bathroom. 3 minutes later, I was sitting on the cool tile floor, clutching a stick with 2 pink lines that seemed too bright to be real. I laughed. I cried. I whispered to the empty room, "Finally. Please." Finally, I wanted to call Daniel immediately. But no, not like this. Not on the phone while he was in Denver for another so-called property conference. This deserved more than a rushed call across time zones. This was our miracle. So I planned. I booked a table at the Solstice Room, the very restaurant where he slipped a ring onto my finger 6 years ago. I bought a tiny pair of ivory booties and framed the sonogram from my first ultrasound. I wrapped them in velvet, tied with a gold ribbon. A perfect reveal, a perfect moment, at least that's what I told myself. And then there was Tessa, my younger sister, 31, Pilates instructor turned wellness influencer, all effortless charm and curated perfection. She breezed into my kitchen a week before Daniel's return, holding a glossy gift bag with her studio's logo. "Thought you could use some stress relief," she chirped, pulling out candles and a lavender eye mask. I smiled politely. Tessa always had some brand deal to push. Then she asked it. "So, have you picked nursery colors yet?" My stomach dropped. My pulse stuttered. I hadn't told a soul. Not my parents, not my best friend, and definitely not her. I forced a laugh. "Nursery colors? That's random." Her eyes lingered a beat too long, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lip. "Just a thought. You know, future planning. Future planning." The words clanged in my ears long after she left.
When your sister asks about nursery colors before your husband even knows you're pregnant, that's not sisterly intuition, that's a heist in yoga pants. Drop a red flag if you've ever felt someone measuring curtains in a house that wasn't theirs.
The Solstice Room had always been our place, candlelight against glass walls, the glow of the city stretching over Elliott Bay, and a pianist weaving soft notes through the air. It was where Daniel first told me he loved me, where he proposed with shaking hands and a too loud laugh that made the couple at the next table smile. I thought it would also be where I told him we had finally beaten the odds. That night, I wore the navy dress he'd once said made me look like the woman who could conquer anyone in the room. I wanted to feel that way, for just a moment, before handing him the velvet box waiting in my purse. Dinner passed in careful beats. I told him about my students, the boy who'd worked up the courage to ask for help, the girl who'd finally stood up to a bully. He nodded, distracted, swirling his wine. His phone sat face up beside his plate, screen lighting with every buzz. I pushed through the silence. "I'm glad you're back. I missed you." He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. The waiter appeared with a dessert, a chocolate souffle crowned with a sparkler. The hiss and crackle lit Daniel's face in flashes, like a camera snapping a mugshot. That's when his phone buzzed again, one new message, from Tessa. "Door code again?" T. My throat closed. I stared at the screen. My sister's name burned there, casual, intimate, like she belonged in his pocket. He didn't snatch the phone away, he didn't stumble or lie, he just looked at me. "Aria," he said, his voice as flat as the table between us. "I'm in love with Tessa." The sparkler hissed to silence. The restaurant hum carried on. Clinking silverware, muted laughter, the faint echo of the pianist's keys. But my world tilted off its axis. I felt my hand drift to the velvet box in my purse, grazing the corner of the silver frame inside. My miracle, our miracle. I almost pulled it out, almost slid it across the table, almost forced him to see the heartbeat that was already flickering inside me. But no, he didn't deserve it. The chair legs scraped loudly as I stood. Several diners turned to look. Daniel leaned forward, hissing under his breath. "Aria, sit down. You're making a scene." For the first time in years, I didn't listen. I turned. I walked out of the solstice room into the sharp night air, the velvet box still sealed inside my bag. I didn't look back.
Oh, so she's making a scene? That's rich. Coming from the man juggling dessert, a wife, and her sister. If that were me, the souffle would have landed in his lap. Tell me, are you a walkout type or a silent freeze type?
The drive home was a blur of headlights and rain. My phone buzzed nonstop in the passenger seat, Daniel's name lighting the screen again and again. "You're overreacting. Get back here, Aria. Don't humiliate us. You're unstable right now. Let's talk like adults, not a single ounce of remorse." I silenced the phone and gripped the wheel tighter. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my hands ached from holding on too hard. I tapped the code into the smart lock. Error. I tried again. Error. A chill slid down my spine. Daniel had changed the code. Tonight. I fumbled in my purse, found the old brass spare key I kept buried in a side pocket, and slipped it into the back door. The tumblers clicked. The alarm beeped as I stepped inside, entering the override code before the system could wail. The house was dark, but not empty. I could hear something faint upstairs, a bass-heavy thrum, muted, like music seeping through floorboards. I crept up slowly, the sound grew clearer, a playlist. Not mine, not Daniel's, Tessa's. I pushed open the guest room door and froze. A tripod stood by the bed, its ring light unplugged but still tilted toward rumpled sheets. A silk robe, the color of champagne, lay tossed across the chair. Not mine, not even close. My chest tightened. I stepped closer. On the nightstand was a glass with lipstick smeared on the rim. Tessa's shade, a glossy mauve she bragged about in every photo shoot. I swallowed hard, heart hammering. Then, under the bed, I saw it. A half-zipped suitcase. I knelt, my hands trembling as I pulled it out. The initials were stitched in gold thread across the leather tag. TB Tessa Bennett. Inside were her clothes, workout sets, designer water bottles, even one of Daniel's tailored shirts, sloppily folded. It wasn't just an affair. She'd moved herself in. On the desk across the room, Daniel's broker laptop sat open. He must have left in a hurry. The screen had timed out, but not locked. I jiggled the mouse. His email loaded. At the top of the inbox, flight confirmation, Cayman Islands. My stomach dropped as I scrolled. Multiple bookings, 2 names, his and hers. I snapped photos with my phone of the receipts, the robe, the suitcase tag, evidence. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. but I kept clicking. Proof. Every image, every betrayal documented. Because I wasn't just a wife in shock anymore. I was building a case.
When the man changes the locks before the wife even gets home? Oh, sweetheart, that's not foresight, that's guilt. And a silk robe in the guest room? Please, comment below. Would you torch it, trash it, or take photos like Aria?
I didn't sleep that night. I sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor of the guest room, the glow of my phone screen lighting every damning image I'd just taken. The robe, the suitcase, the flight confirmations. Each photo was a nail in the coffin of the life I thought I had. Downstairs, the refrigerator hummed like background static. The clock ticked past midnight, then 1, then 2. Every sound in the house felt foreign, like I'd broken into someone else's home. I wrapped my arms around my stomach and pressed my forehead to my knees. For years, I had begged for a miracle. Now that it was here, the father was poisoning it with betrayal. Hot tears blurred my vision, then dried into nothing. Grief hollowed me out until I felt empty, weightless, like a husk. But underneath the hollow, something else began to rise. Not hope. Not yet. Resolve. Because I wasn't going to be his fool anymore. And I wasn't going to let Tessa keep painting herself as the polished, perfect sister who just happened to stumble into his arms. Number. She had built this, and I was going to look her in the eye and burn it down. At dawn, I packed a tote bag with the evidence-laden phone, a change of clothes, and the velvet box I still hadn't opened. My hands brushed over the gold ribbon tied tight around it. Not yet, I thought. Not until he knows what he threw away. As I zipped the bag, my phone buzzed on the table. Another message from Daniel. You don't understand. Tessa sees me. She makes space for me. You never did. I stared at the words until the letters blurred. Space? He hadn't just stolen my sister. He had handed her my life and told her to redecorate it. My chest tightened, but my resolve hardened. If Tessa wanted space so badly, I'd give it to her. On her own studio floor, in front of the clients who worshipped her curated perfection. The next move was mine.
Oh, so the sister makes space for him, please. She made space in his bed, his bank account, and his house. And Aria, she's about to make space in her calendar for a confrontation. Comment below. Ever wanted to drag the truth into daylight?
The bell above the glass door chimed as I stepped into Tessa's wellness studio. The space smelled of eucalyptus and money, white walls, gold accents, clients stretching on reformers while a mellow playlist pulsed overhead. Everyone moved like they were auditioning for a lifestyle ad. And there was Tessa, perched at the front in seamless lilac leggings, her hair twisted into a perfect bun. My sister, my blood, smiling as if betrayal wasn't dripping off her skin. When she saw me, her smile widened, polished as glass. Aria! Surprise! Everyone, meet my sister, Seattle's best school counselor. A few clients murmured polite greetings. Tessa walked over, air kissing me on the cheek. Lavender perfume clung to her. Come to try a class? I've got a prenatal package I can comp you. You'll love it. I almost laughed. Prenatal. The word twisted my stomach. I pulled a folder from my tote, slid a few pages onto the reception desk. Printed flight confirmations, Cayman Islands, 2 passengers. Her smile faltered. Funny, I said quietly, how your brand trips to Denver also booked Ocean View Suites. With Daniel. The client stretched in silence, ears straining. Tessa's tone stayed sugary, but her eyes sharpened. Aria, this isn't the place. Exactly, I cut in. This is my guest room's robe. My guest room's bed. My husband's password-protected broker laptop with your initials on the itinerary. I laid down the photos one by one, the robe, the suitcase tag, the lipstick glass. Her composure cracked like thin ice. She leaned closer, her voice a venomous hiss only I was supposed to hear. He promised he'd tell you after Denver. You were never really there for him, Aria. You made everything about your job. I gave him what you couldn't. The words sliced deep, but I forced myself not to flinch. You gave him betrayal, I said evenly. And now, everyone's watching you give him excuses. A murmur rippled through the studio. One of her own clients whispered loudly to another, "Is this for real?" Tessa's face flushed. She straightened, trying to recover. She's unstable, she said quickly, plastering on a smile. You know how stress can twist things. I picked up the robe photo, held it high. Does stress unpack your monogrammed suitcase under my bed? Or change the locks on my house? Her mask shattered. The room went silent, heavy, until one of the clients near the door muttered, "Wow. That's low." Another whispered, "I'm canceling my package." I gathered the photos back into my folder, slipped them into my tote. You wanted space in my marriage? Consider it exposed, I said. And then I walked out, leaving her standing frozen in front of the very audience she'd curated so carefully.
Influencers influence until receipts trend louder than ring lights. And honey, those Pilates stretches won't help when your reputation does the splits. Comment below. Would you have blown up her class or taken her down in private?
The adrenaline from the studio showdown carried me through the day. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt like I'd snatched a piece of my power back. But power, like money, has a way of being stolen overnight. The next afternoon, I stopped by the grocery store on the way to my parents' house. Nothing extravagant. Bread, eggs, ginger tea my mom swore would help the nausea. At the checkout, I slid my joint debit card across the counter. The cashier swiped it, frowned. "I'm sorry. It's declined." Heat flared up my neck. "That's strange. Can you try again?" She did. Same result. The line behind me shuffled impatiently. My throat tightened. I forced a smile and paid with the emergency cash I'd stuffed in my wallet. My hands shook as I shoved the receipt into the bag. By the time I made it to my car, my heart was pounding. I dialed the bank, voice cracking as I punched through the automated menus. 5 minutes on hold. Then a monotone voice. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Pierce." The account was frozen this morning by the primary account holder, Daniel. My vision blurred. He hadn't just changed the locks, he had cut me off completely. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, a crisp white envelope sat on the porch table. My name, typed neat and sharp across the front. I tore it open with shaking hands. A letter. From a law firm I didn't recognize. Clinical. Brutal. "Due to your erratic behavior and demonstrated emotional instability, Mr. Pierce has taken steps to secure marital assets in order to protect the estate." Erratic. Unstable. He was painting me as the problem. My chest squeezed so tight I had to lean against the wall. The betrayal wasn't just personal anymore, it was tactical. I called the only person I trusted with a fight like this, Nadia Cole, a friend of a friend, family law attorney. She picked up on the second ring, her voice low and measured. "Aria, I was told you might call. Start from the beginning." Slowly, I poured it all out. The solstice room, the lock change, the suitcase, the studio, and now the frozen accounts. My voice shook, but Nadia didn't interrupt. When I finally fell silent, there was a pause. "Good," she said. My breath caught. "Good? He's cut me off. He's calling me unstable. How is that good?" "Because he overplayed," Nadia replied smoothly. "He thinks intimidation will force you into silence or a quick settlement. But he left a paper trail. You documented his affair. He documented his retaliation. That's leverage." Her words steadied me like a hand on my back. "What do I do first?" I asked. "You officially inform him of your pregnancy," she said. "On record. Calm. Direct. No emotion. Can you do that?" My stomach nodded. The thought of hearing his voice again made bile rise in my throat. But Nadia was right. "Yes," I whispered. "I can." That evening, I sat on my childhood bed with the curtains drawn and dialed Daniel's number. He answered instantly, his voice sharp. "Finally." "Aria, what the hell is going on? You embarrassed yourself at Tessa's studio." I cut him off, forcing steel into my voice. "Daniel, I'm calling to inform you of something you have a right to know." I'm pregnant. Silence. A long, empty silence. For one foolish heartbeat, I thought maybe I'd pierced his armor. Maybe the man I married was still buried somewhere inside. Then he laughed. Harsh. Disbelieving. "You're trying to baby trap me? After all this?" God, Aria, and then the dagger. I hope you miscarry. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt nothing but a deep Arctic cold. The man I thought I loved was gone, and in his place was a monster.
He froze the bank accounts, called her unstable, and then wished she'd lose the baby. Ladies, we don't call that a husband. We call that Exhibit A. Would you have shattered the phone or screenshot the call log for court?
Nadia's voice echoed in my ear long after that call with Daniel ended. Pull in his family, quietly. If Eleanor or Victor still care about you, they'll see through him, and they have more leverage than any court right now. She was right. Daniel might not care about consequences, but his parents? Old money donors, society darlings. They cared about appearances, legacy, control. So I invited Eleanor to meet me at the annual North Shore Scholarship Gala. Neutral ground. No lawyers. No Daniel. The ballroom shimmered with crystal chandeliers and the hum of polite conversation. Students in borrowed tuxes mingled with benefactors in couture gowns. The air smelled of roses and ambition. I spotted Eleanor across the room in emerald silk, her posture regal, her pearls catching the light. She looked thrilled to see me, until she registered the hollows under my eyes. Aria, darling. She kissed my cheek. You look tired. Are you well? I pulled her aside to a quiet corner near the silent auction tables. My fingers tightened around the folder in my clutch. There's something you need to know, I said softly. About Daniel. And Tessa. Her brows furrowed. Tessa. I slid the photos across the table. The robe, the suitcase, the flights. Eleanor's face drained of color. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I kept my voice steady, though my heart pounded. He told me at dinner he was in love with her. The same night, I was going to tell him I'm pregnant. When I confronted her, she admitted it. He changed the locks, froze our accounts, and told me he hopes I miscarry. Eleanor's hand flew to her chest. Her eyes brimmed, horror cutting through her polish. I wanted you to know before it hits the courts, I said, before his story paints me as unstable. I slid the lawyer's letter across last. He's already trying. Eleanor's hand trembled as she read. Then her expression hardened, steel settling over her features. She reached for her phone. Victor needs to hear this. Now. She stepped aside, dialing, her voice low but urgent. I caught fragments. Affair. With her sister. Frozen accounts. Pregnant. 15 minutes later, she returned, her jaw set. Victor is furious. He said, and I quote, he's written himself out of this family. Not a dime, not a cent. Her eyes softened as she reached for my hand. Aria, I am so sorry. You wanted me as a grandmother, and you shall have me. That child will be protected. You have my word. I swallowed hard, tears threatening for the first time in days. Eleanor. No. Her grip tightened. He betrayed us all. Victor is reallocating the Pierce Trust as we speak. Every cent earmarked for Daniel will go into a trust for your baby. His name will be carved out permanently. He's made his choice. Now we'll make ours. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something bloom in my chest. Not relief. Not victory. Hope. 2 days after the gala, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Daniel's voice roared through the line, ragged and raw. What did you say to them, Aria? What the hell did you do? I stayed silent, listening to his unravel. They cut me off. Do you understand? Everything, the accounts, the estate, the inheritance, it's gone. Victor said it's going into some damn trust for your brat. You think you've won? You think you can turn them against me? His breath came fast, panicked. This wasn't the confident broker who strutted through open houses. This was a man watching his empire crumble. I hung up without a word. Because he was wrong. I hadn't turned them against him. He had.
Oh, so Mr. Big Shot thought he could freeze her out? Newsflash, Mommy and Daddy just froze him out of the inheritance and redirected it to the baby. Somebody call Karma, she's cashing checks tonight. Comment below, is that poetic justice or what?
If Daniel lashed out in rage, Tessa went for image control. The morning after Eleanor's call, my social feed exploded with screenshots. Tessa had posted a Notes app apology to her 80,000 followers. White background, black text, faux vulnerability. I made mistakes. I let love blind me. I never meant to hurt anyone, least of all my sister. Please respect our privacy as we heal. The comments were split. Half her fans offered sympathy. The other half smelled blood. Girl, you don't accidentally sleep with your sister's husband. Privacy? You built your life on oversharing. #cancel Tessa. By noon, 2 of her brand sponsors had quietly dropped her from their social media campaigns. By evening, a third issued a pause for review. I didn't post a word. I didn't need to. Eleanor's foundation was one of her biggest backers, and Eleanor wasn't subtle when she pulled strings. That night, headlights swept across my parents' driveway. A sleek black SUV idled, and then the door slammed. Tessa. She strode up the walkway in a designer coat, phone in hand, already recording. "Aria, please," she called, voice trembling in rehearsed desperation. "Let's talk sister to sister." The internet's twisting everything. I opened the door just enough to block it with my body. My parents hovered protectively behind me. "You're not welcome here." Her eyes flicked to the camera. "So, you won't even hear me out? You'd rather destroy me online than fix this in private?" My laugh was sharp, humorless. "Destroy you? You did that yourself." I pulled a printout from my tote, one of her brand contracts. The morality clause, highlighted in yellow. "Maybe you should read the fine print, Tess. They don't love wellness influencers who blow up families." Her face blanched, mask slipping. "You wouldn't—" "Eleanor already did," I said, voice calm. "Your biggest sponsor was her foundation. Consider yourself rebranded." Behind her, a porch light flickered on from the neighbor's house. More eyes, more witnesses. For the first time in her life, Tessa had no audience to charm. Just a lens, capturing her panic. She lowered the phone slowly. "You'll regret this," she whispered. I shut the door in her face.
She wanted to cry privacy after building a brand on public lies? Honey, karma isn't a hater, it's a manager, and the contract says, terminated. Tell me, would you have slammed the door faster or let her sweat a little longer?
The rain hadn't stopped all week, a steady gray curtain over the city. I was curled up on my parents' couch, tea cooling in my hands, when headlights swept across the driveway. My dad lowered his newspaper. Expecting anyone? I wasn't. Through the window, I saw it. Daniel's silver SUV, tires crunching on wet gravel. Behind it, a white van idled with a locksmith logo on the side. My stomach twisted. A fist pounded on the door. "Aria! Open up. This is my house too. You don't get to run off and play victim." Dad stood, his jaw tightening. I set my tea down, my hand trembling. "I'll handle it." When I cracked the door, Daniel loomed on the porch, soaked through, eyes bloodshot with rage. The locksmith stood a few feet back, clearly uncomfortable. Daniel jabbed a thumb over his shoulder. "He's here to change the locks. You're not locking me out of my own life." The absurdity hit me like ice water. "This isn't your house," I said, my voice steady. "This is my parents' home. You have no right here." The locksmith hesitated. Maybe I should—" "Do it," Daniel barked. "Don't," I snapped, louder than I intended. "You touch that door, you're complicit." The man raised his palms, muttered, "I'm out," and jogged back to his van. Daniel stepped closer, his voice dropping into something darker. "You had nothing before me, Aria. Nothing. I made you, and I can unmake you." My phone was already raised, recording. "You've already done that yourself." For a moment, his eyes flicked to my stomach, then back up, and a chill skated down my spine. My dad appeared at my side, his frame filling the doorway. "You're done here, Daniel." Leave red and blue lights splashed across the driveway. A patrol car pulled up, 2 officers stepping out. Daniel spun, shouting, "She's unstable." "She's lying." But the officers didn't buy it. They listened calmly as I handed over Nadia's emailed petition. Minutes later, Daniel was handed a folded document on the lawn, a temporary protective order. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead. his hands clenched around the paper, his face twisted with hatred. "This isn't over," he spat. But for the first time, I knew it was.
He dragged a locksmith to her parents' house like he was auditioning for an HGTV show called Lockouts and Losers. But baby, the only thing that got remodeled was his dignity. Comment: would you have faced him at the door or let Dad swing first?
If Daniel thought intimidation would scare me back into silence, he didn't know Nadia. Within a week, we were sitting in a sleek downtown conference room, Daniel across the table with his lawyer. His suit was pressed, his jaw tight, but his hands couldn't stop fidgeting. His lawyer droned on about amicable settlement and fair division of assets. According to them, Daniel's only real asset was his broker's salary. Everything else? Minimal investments. It was laughable. Nadia let him finish, her expression smooth as glass. Then she gave a slight nod to the quiet man seated beside her. Priyank Shah, a forensic accountant with owlish glasses and the patience of a saint. Priyank slid a thick spiral-bound binder across the polished table. The thud echoed like a gavel. "I'd like to direct your attention to page 47, Nadia said, her voice calm, almost amused. Daniel's lawyer frowned, flipped pages. His face drained. Priyank's meticulous flowcharts spoke for themselves. Offshore transfers, Shell LLCS, payments disguised as staging expenses for listings. Money funneled into Pierce Vista Holdings Limited in the Cayman Islands. Daniel went pale. His lawyer turned on him hissing, "You didn't disclose this?" Daniel stammered. It's not what it looks like." Nadia leaned forward, her voice razor sharp. "It looks like fraud, Mr. Pierce. It looks like deception, and it looks like my client is entitled to half the rest of the meeting unraveled in silence." His lawyer folded completely, scribbling notes furiously while Daniel sat there gutted. By the end of the day, the terms were clear. A substantial portion of the hidden assets redirected to me. Generous alimony agreement. Automatic wage garnishment for child support. And the final blow, Daniel voluntarily relinquishing custody rights. He didn't want to be a father. And now, legally, he wasn't one. When I signed the papers, my hand didn't tremble. Each letter of my name felt like chiseling the final words onto a tombstone. Not for me. For the marriage that had never truly existed.
Nothing says checkmate like a forensic accountant with a flowchart. He thought he was slick with his Cayman's hideaway. Turns out, hiding money works better for divorce court than Instagram. Tell me, would you rather have the house, the cash, or full custody?
8 months later, the house was quiet except for the rhythmic creak of a rocking chair. Moonlight spilled through gauzy curtains, painting the nursery in silver. In my arms, my daughter, Nova, breathed in tiny, steady sighs. Her fingers curled around mine, impossibly small, yet unyielding, as if she'd known from the start she'd need to hold on tight. She was perfect. She was everything. She was worth the war. I looked down at the velvet box on the shelf beside us. The box I'd once planned to hand to Daniel across a candlelit table. Inside, the ivory booties and the sonogram still rested, ribbon intact. For weeks after the divorce, I couldn't look at it without breaking. But one night, I placed it on Nova's keepsake shelf, next to her birth bracelet and first photo. Not as a wound, not as a reminder of what was lost. As a trophy. Proof that I carried light through darkness. Proof that he didn't win. Eleanor and Victor kept their promise. The trust fund was secured in Nova's name, enough to cover her future, no matter what happened. They visited every week, doting on her, filling the nursery with laughter and lullabies. They never spoke Daniel's name. It was as if he'd been erased from the family ledger. Tessa. Her studio shuttered within months. Sponsors vanished. Clients trickled away. And her last desperate livestream ended in tears when even her ride or dies abandoned her. The comments were merciless. She disappeared from social media shortly after. Daniel? Word traveled fast in real estate circles. Nobody wanted to partner with a broker who had a reputation for fraud, family scandal, and police reports. He downgraded from waterfront listings to apartment rentals on the outskirts of town, from Pierce the Closer to Pierce the Cautionary Tale. I thought I'd feel vindicated when I heard. I didn't. I felt nothing, because their story wasn't mine anymore. Mine was here, in the soft weight of my daughter's body against my chest, in the hush of the nursery at 2 a.m., in the overwhelming, all-consuming love that made every scar worth carrying. I pressed a kiss to Nova's hair and whispered, "We made it." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it.
He chose her sister, froze her accounts, and even wished her harm. But in the end, she walked away with the baby, the trust fund, and his own family at her back. That velvet box? Not a gift for him, a crown for her. This was her story. But tomorrow, it could be yours. Because where there's betrayal, there's always fate waiting to strike. You've been watching Flame and Fate Chronicles, where every lie burns and every truth writes its own destiny. So tell me, what's one boundary you wish you had set sooner? Drop it in the comments. Then hit share. Binge the next tale, and remember, the flames may hurt, but fate always delivers justice.